Good afternoon. Welcome to this Beyond the Basics training for the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS as we call it. Today we're going beyond the basics of CERS rostering and reports for coordinators and administrators. This training session, brought to you by the California Department of Education, is an intermediate to advanced level training. It's designed for users who have that local educational agency, or LEA level, or site level role in the Test Operations Management System, or TOMS. So again, LEA level, site level role in TOMS for today's session. The features and functions covered in today's session are only available to those that have one of those administrator roles in CERS. So again, LEA level or site level TOMS roles. We also want to acknowledge that this training builds upon the Introduction to CERS trainings, which are available both as a recording of the live training and as a series of micro-learning videos that can be viewed at any time. So our agenda for today, by the end of today's training, you will be able to understand the features available in the CERS Administrator Tools section. That includes custom aggregate reports, district school exports, and more. Learn about some of the advanced CERS rostering processes and get answers to your CERS questions. And as I mentioned, this builds upon the Introduction to CERS trainings. We're going beyond the basics, diving a little deeper, if you will, into the topics beyond that introductory level. And again, I feel like I can't say this enough up front. This module covers the features and permissions that are limited to those administrator level users. This includes managing system access, running reports. So these are things that are intentionally restricted to the administrator level users for data security and accuracy. So if you are a teacher level user, a test administrator, a test examiner, you will not have these features available in your live CERS environment. We recommend you attend Module 2 and Module 3, which are geared toward all CERS users. Now, as you may know from the Introduction to CERS trainings that we held back in the fall, there's an excellent training tool called the CERS Sandbox. For all of the system demonstrations and explorations that you will be doing today, we'll be using the CERS Sandbox. It allows educators to get familiar with CERS in a non-secure environment. This means the CERS Sandbox is a public website, so the URL can be shared with anyone interested in learning more about CERS. The Sandbox has all the same features and functions as the live CERS environment, but it uses fictitious data, and the interim assessment items in the Sandbox are publicly released sample items, so no secure stuff in the Sandbox. Specifically, the CERS Sandbox does not have test questions from the live and secure interim assessments or summative assessments. And that makes the Sandbox a great tool for individual exploration and group training. There's no need to worry about keeping the items, the results, the data, or student information secure in the Sandbox. We want to share a few quick differences between the CERS Sandbox and the live CERS environment. The purpose of the Sandbox is for training on CERS features and functions, not for analyzing data. But the live CERS environment has real student data and personally identifiable information. So it is all about real data and digging in. So in the Sandbox, some assessment rules, like the alternate assessment for all rule, they don't apply here. And you are going to see students in the Sandbox with results from both alternate and general assessments. And again, it's just a fictitious playground. Next up is security. The Sandbox is a public website, uses fictitious students and data, live CERS environment, real student data, personally identifiable information, secure and password protected. And lastly is access. And what we mean by access is that in the Sandbox, we are going to choose a role from a drop-down menu before we enter the Sandbox. In the live CERS environment, there is no selecting a role. In the live CERS environment, you get the role or roles that you have been assigned in TOMS. This is great for the Sandbox because choosing that role can be very helpful for users who want to learn how CERS appears for different roles. For an example, if you're an administrator, you can see a teacher role and how CERS would appear for a teacher role in the Sandbox and all the features available along with that. One last piece of very helpful information before we jump in. That is about understanding Tom's roles and how they provide access to CERS. So here's our quick recap. California LEA staff have access to CERS, again, after they've been assigned a role in TOMS. The user role will determine which features and data are viewable in CERS for that user. So the LEA CAASPP coordinator, the LEA ELPAC coordinator, and anyone with an educator district role have access to results for all of the students in the LEA. You are the site coordinator or the educator site role. You have access to results for all of the students in that school site that you are associated with in TOMS. And again, all of those roles we mentioned just now are administrator roles for the purposes of these trainings. Teachers access results for individual students in student groups that are assigned to them, either by the LEA level or site level administrator roles. So teachers, in addition to their TOMS role, as either a test examiner or test administrator, they need someone with an administrator role in TOMS to roster students to the teacher in CERS. This is called managed student groups and is often referred to as rostering, and we'll be discussing that in greater detail during the advanced rostering section of the training today. My last job here is to introduce you to your wonderful training team. So let's do some introductions. My name's Nikki Antonovich. I will be your producer for this training. This session is led by your excellent trainers who have a lot of experience with CERS. Today we have with us Alicia Sanborn from the Washington Unified School District and Joe Valero from the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. And I will hand you off to Alicia.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Nikki. My name is Alicia Sanborn, and I am in Washington Unified in Fresno, and I am the District Director of Early Literacy and Assessments. All right, so let's jump into those administrator tools. If you have an administrator role in CERS, you'll have a section when you log into your live environment called Administrator Tools, and it has the following options. There are custom aggregate reports where there are many custom reports for student performance analysis. There is a district school exports tool where you can export that data and use it in another application. There is a student groups tool where we can create and manage those student groups, otherwise known as rostering, to which my dear friend Joe will be going into that deeper dive of beyond the basics with CERS of how to do so just in a little bit. And last but not least is the district resources tool that allows us as local LEAs to upload local instructional resources that we use in our system. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. And in the CERS sandbox, a district admin role needs to be selected to have access to all four of those buttons, just like Nikki mentioned. However, in the live CERS environment, if a person has the LEA coordinator role, site coordinator, educator, district, or educator site roles in TOMS, all of those four buttons in the administrator tool section of CERS will appear. So this means anyone with one of those roles can manage student groups. They can upload those instructional resources and have access to these beautiful reports. All right, so now we're already going to jump into the first demo of today to explore those details in more depth as far as those reports go. So let me go ahead and navigate on over to our CAASPP and ELPAC website. You'll notice here over on the right is our CERS California Educator Reporting System icon. So I'll click there. Over here on the left is that live environment we keep talking so much about of how we access TOMS with our logon. But for the sake of our demos today, we will be using the fabulous sandbox. I'm going to go ahead and select that district admin role here to show you and enter into the sandbox. So here's that landing page that shows the administrator tools that I just talked briefly about. But I do want to point out, we always have access to resources with CERS at our fingertips if we need a little bit more information of how to interpret or access the system. And so over here we have the custom aggregate report. I'm going to jump into those in just a moment. Here's that district school export where our Excel wizards in the space can export the data and put it into another application for their analysis and their heart's content. And then we have our student groups here. So where we create and manage those student groups, otherwise known as rostering, which Joe will show you just in a little bit. And then here's that district resources icon I mentioned, where when we put on our hats thinking in our LEAs, that could look like your local assessment calendars that you upload there. It could look like a graphic organizer that you might want your teachers of your district to be using for interims to help students prepare for summatives. It could even look like those smarter balanced rubrics for teachers to have right at their fingertips within logging into CERS. So really valuable tool here for us as district and site coordinators. All right, so let's jump into those custom aggregate reports. I'm going to go ahead and share with you the yearly report first. This is a great report of how you compare student performance over selected school years. So in your live environment, you'll be able to type in the name of your school here or your district, but because I'm in the sandbox, it defaults here to our sample district. You do in your live and here in the sandbox have an option to look at state results for your summatives. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check that so you can look at some analysis in comparison. So it will automatically default here on that summative, but I do want to point out in running the yearly reports, you can look at interim data for specific subjects. This is a great way to check test completion quickly as you are going through the year on different grade levels, their district calendar dates. Wonderful tool here to be able to just quickly glance to see how many are complete. So I want to make sure I mention that to us, especially those site assessment coordinators in the room. So I'm going to go ahead for the sake of this first one, just choose ELA here for our subject around pulling the years. I want to look at some grade spans here, so you're able to select more than one, as many grade levels as you'd like, and you are able to select multiple years. And so I'm going to go ahead and just leave 2. Anytime in CERS, we have these icons. Please click them. It will give you a more detailed information as to what it means and knowing if that's how you want to build your report. Fabulous options. So when we think LEA, site leaders, I know in our district, we've had a lot of focus around our multilingual learners. So using the advanced filters here, go ahead and choose English language acquisition status. And I can even dig in more so where I can get very specific around subgroup data and even that English language acquisition status to only pull my English learners in this report. So as we think of the recent dashboard, district leaders in the room, how amazing is this report to be able to look at student groups that we might be in accountability systems for. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the English learner option. Last but not least, with each report, you get to review the report before you generate, and then we have to give the name. So I'm just going to go ahead and ELAML 23 to 25, whatever nomenclature it is to your heart's content, as long as it makes sense to you. One thing to note, the more information you're building in the reports, the longer it will take to generate. I used state data, I had 3 grade levels, and then I wanted to look at my multilingual learners only. You'll notice it generated pretty quickly, but the more, the longer it takes. So you'll notice here, I have the state up here on the top left for those grade levels, and then down below is the district. So I'm able to see the overall number of students assessed. I'm able to see the achievement comparison in these beautiful graphs, the average scale score error bands, and then the achievement level distributions. At any time, we can look at number of views, very important as we are thinking about what happens across our grade levels, especially around reclassification for our multilingual learners, in thinking district hat around our LTELs and how we are looking and analyzing performance. So wonderful report here. And then last but not least, with all of our reports, with a click of a button, it exports to a CSV file for some further analysis. All right, next report to show you. I would love to look at the target report. It's my favorite, and you'll see why just a moment. Here, this is for only summative assessments. We choose math or ELA. So I'm going to go ahead and give my math former teachers in the room some love here. And I'm going to go ahead and select at least the 1 grade level. The system will only allow you to do the 1. So if you get into every report and you get confused, it's okay. The system will only allow you to build it as you can. So you can choose the 1 school year. So I can do the most recent year. Again, this is fictitious, so we don't have summative results yet, but it will still generate for me. I can put subgroups and advanced filters. I'm not going to for the nature of this report. I can review here, and I'm just going to go ahead and give it 6 math target as a name and creating the report. And here's why it's my favorite. So as it generates, you'll be able to see the same information broken down as we saw for the yearly reports. However, it's going to give us the target related data. Oh boy. See, it's taken a moment. I think you're all in there already trying to get in and dig in with me. Good job. All right, so here you'll notice that we have the claim, concepts and procedures for math, and then it gives you the descriptions of the target. It'll give you the number of students assessed, and it will tell you the performance for this particular target in comparison to the rest of the assessment. So students did not do so well in comparison with the rest of the test, and they did achieve that level of below. Now here's why it's my favorite. So scrolling down, I can look and analyze. I can export the data just like I showed you. But watch this. I'm going to put my LEA coordinator hat on. I'm going to go ahead and control copy that. So I'm going to come over to an untitled spreadsheet. And look at that. I am able to transfer the data over. And so I'm going to share practice in our district. And what I do is building the district assessment calendars. I pull these reports every year. I build them for every grade level for ELA, math, and for science. And I choose interim assessments based on the target of need. So this school year for us, target 7 with this particular grade level. Students did worse for this target. So we are going to put it into our interim assessment calendar to make sure that we are using an interim that covers this target. And you'll notice last year we had reasoning and evidence was a target. And look at what happened as a result. So 24 to 25, our emphasis, our intentional design using those interims as a result of pulling this target report allowed us to make those intentional decisions. All right, so you'll see why that's my favorite, all right? Okay, next one is the ELPAC composite score report. So again, you can type in specific names for your district here in your live environment. You can look at state results, but I'm gonna go ahead and choose ELPAC. Now remember, composite scores, oral language is listening and speaking, and then our written is the reading and writing. And so in thinking in a district, for example, you could really be focusing around written language and that composite level in specific grade levels as we are thinking of trying to support students with reclassification before they would be on the dashboard for being an LTEL. And so again, looking at the number of years, you can look at what has happened with your PD and what is happening as a result of students. Again, report review here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just give that a name. Can never type when people are watching me. And then creating that report. So again, depending upon how much information you put in, the longer it will take. So here are those assessment grade levels. You'll notice here's the composite for written language. I'm still able to get the beautiful data points in the bar graphs. I can sort out and analyze as I need to see where some of those wins are for particular grade levels, to see some next steps in how we could make plans moving forward with our either district or site leader hats. All right, aggregate reports are so many ones, so let's just go on to the next. So claim domain, I'm going to go ahead and model for you here for the CAST assessment. So you're able to drill down and look at specific domains, or you could leave all. You are able to select more than one grade level here. So if you're thinking of your assessment grade levels in our district, we assess our juniors. And so coming down here, we could look at different grade level, a year spans. It's definitely almost 4 o'clock. Can look at some additional subgroups, but then I'm gonna go ahead and give it a name and create that report. And so as we're thinking about intentional design and using the data within CERS and these aggregate reports, we can identify themes that might be happening across domains. So I can look here in my grade levels and see, are there any trends? Are Earth and Space Sciences domains across the grade levels, are students excelling here? Can we lean into that asset and figure out what is happening in the curriculum to achieve more achievement depending upon what it looks like in your live CERS environment. So wonderful domain related report. All right, I'm almost there. Got two more. I want to make sure to show all of them to you before you dig in. So I'm going to show the longitudinal report, and this is a wonderful report to look at over time. And so when I look here, I'm going to go ahead, let's just go back to math. We're going to choose the one, I'm sorry, the grade level spans that I want to look at. And then you'll notice here, I did this on purpose. It will tell me that there are no results prior to 23-24. And so it has me adjust the school years accordingly. And so I just love it. It helps you in case that your brain might be working like mine at this time. So then I'm going to go ahead and abbreviate longitudinal for now and create that report. And you'll notice with this report, we get a lovely graph image. I know many of us love a snip. I do to insert into different documents, presentations, but it shows what is happening over time for students with the scale scores and the achievement level here. So wonderful report. We still get at the bottom, as we've seen with other reports, but fantastic image for us to see. And sometimes the visual looks a little better that way. All right, and last but not least, the ELA and Math Composite Claim Report, another one of my favorites. As we think about what we might not see with students who are proficient according to a level 3 or 4, this is where we can see what is happening with our intentional design. So if I look at, actually I'm going to choose Math 2 so you can see. I'm going to go ahead and leave all so we can look at all those claims. And let's just run one grade level so it goes quickly. All right, report review. I'm just quickly giving it a name here. All right. And so you'll see here summative math and summative ELA. It gives me the breakdown for those composite claims. So as we think about students and what is happening with their achievement, it might not look like they're reaching proficiency of 3 or 4, but what your data might be saying here, and again, this is fictitious data, so it won't always be the best for analysis, but let's pretend in another school year, it went from 41 to 38. And so as we think of the below standard, we want that number to get smaller. And so this is where we're going to see those gaps closing in. We might not see it with the levels 3 or 4 yet, but we would see it here in the progress of what is happening with our intentional design and instructional practices. Okay, so enough of me. I've showed you all of the amazing reports. And it is now going to be your turn. Nikki, I just want to check in around time, or how are we doing?
You're doing great. They can have 9 minutes.
Oh, wow. So making me do math here. All right. So you will have until, let's say, well, let me tell you your directions first to make sure I can do my math right. You have in your resource guide some directions of how you can access the sandbox, and I encourage you to create a yearly report. Select those multiple years, maybe even choose subgroups like I did. Create that target report. Maybe practice copying and pasting into an Excel sheet if that was a new idea for you today. Creating that claim domain report cast. The sky's the limit, however you would like to explore. All right, so I'm going to invite everyone back. We sure hope you enjoyed the exploration time. It's time for some Q&A. Nikki, what do we got?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. The first one started out as a question about multiple user roles in TOMS and how that works for CERS, but it really ended up being a question about why sometimes I don't see the My Groups tab and sometimes it is there. And what is the difference between those two?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So if the user has groups that are assigned to them, it will be in that assigned groups tab, and you'll see the My Groups tab. And if you do not have any groups assigned to you, you would not see that area, and you would have something that would say contact your administrator and for access to group level test results. But you won't see that custom groups tab until the groups have been assigned to you. So I'll say in our LEA, there are certain situations that site coordinators or even myself might be attached to certain groups where I would be able to see those groups. But with my LEA role, I'm able just to see all, with the exception of some groups that I've attached myself in as like a co-teacher in some classrooms just to kind of be able to look and see. So that's why you wouldn't be able to see.
Thank you. And I'm going to put in a shameless plug for Module 2 of CERS Beyond the Basics, custom groups. You want to be here next week to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, what is the difference between those CERS reports and the TOMS report of the student score data file?
Okay. So in CERS, it will reflect students that are currently enrolled in your organization, even if they tested in another district. So if I go in my live environment right now and I pull and I have students that assessed somewhere else, they are going to show in CERS in those reports that I just generated. When you go into your TOMS and you go to generate that data extract, there are two options. You can run that extract by enrolled, or you can do by tested. Using the CERS is a really quick way to know how your students are doing, those students that are with you right now. And it's helpful versus constantly downloading the extract over and over again as you have, the year go on. So it's a really quick way to just go into your CERS, use the aggregate reports because it's going to be kids who assess somewhere else or with you when you're generating those reports.
Thank you much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for target reports, can you choose more than one grade at a time?
With the target report, it is just the one. And then just a little bit of a tip. The queries in generating and building, as I showed you in building the test out, you are able to actually go back and at the top, after downloading that target report, you can save it and then just change the grade level. So really quick way to be able to not go back and rebuild every time. Just create new query and it will save, and that way you can keep just generating for your different grade levels.
Yeah. So it's target report, create report button, view, download, whatever, create new query, change the grade level, create report, and cycle, cycle, cycle. I love
Correct.
it. Thank you. Last question for this Q&A is, can you save reports? Like, I've built this report and I love it. Can I save it?
Yes, absolutely. So as if you're looking right now on your generated reports, up at the top is the My Reports. That's where things generate, and you are able to go ahead and select Save Report Query. So same idea here from the drop down, and using those three dots to the report you just created in the name column. So up in the top right hand corner, you'll notice My Reports, and that is where you're able to save that report query and give it a name. Again, the nomenclature is only important to you, right? Like, so you know this is the report that I want to go back to and regenerate as the year goes on.
All right. That wraps up our first Q&A. Thank you much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Joe Valero from the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. Glad you're all here with us today. So we're going to pivot to advanced rostering now. And so remember that rostering simply refers to creating student groups for teachers or for other CERS users. We briefly want to mention that there are two ways to handle rostering. The first is to use the Student Information System, or SIS, to CERS integration. Contact your Student Information System vendor to discuss setting up automatic roster transfers to CERS. The Student Information System vendor integration webpage on the CAASPP and ELPAC website lists all of the SIS vendors who have SIS to CERS integration available. The link to this is in your resource guide, and I know Nikki's put that into the chat here a few times. As a reminder, rostering was included in the Introduction to CERS trainings. And so the link to the recording is in your resource guide. Once again, you want to go over on a Friday night, enjoy a nice video and see about those rostering processes. Once again, right there, that link will take you there. For today's purposes, let's review a few of the high-level rules for the template and then how to complete the template. So please keep in mind, this template has to stay in CSV format. Don't save it as, change it to something different. If it's not a CSV format, it won't work. All the numbers must be in number format with no decimals or abbreviations. So sometimes when you download it, Excel wants to get a little smart and it wants to go over and put it in scientific notation, or it'll go over and add those decimals. You got to go over and make sure that it's just the numbers. Once again, no decimals. You want to clean those up ahead of time. The CSV file must include the headers found in the template file provided below. Do not edit these headers. I did that a few years back, messed up the whole thing. I tried to get a little too sophisticated. Don't change the headers. Leave everything the same. You can't put multiple SSIDs or multiple email addresses in the same row. You'll need a new row for each. This means you can't list multiple email addresses or SSIDs separated by columns in the same cell. They've got to be in different cells. Also, there's a limit of 200 students that may be assigned to a single group. This is important just to keep as a consideration for your planning. So just remember, you can't have 200 of the same group name. So if I have Valero 1 and I have 199 students, perfectly fine. If I go to 201 students on Valero 1, we've exceeded that 200 limit. So make sure that we're being thoughtful as we're going over and thinking about how we want to go over and build these. All right, let's review the column headers in the roster upload template. And in all honesty, if you have a phone, take a picture of this screen right here. This is going to help immensely as you want to go over and build those rosters, or if you want to go and troubleshoot. Once again, I totally take a picture of this right here. It's really, really helpful. So let's look at these columns. The first column is group name. The group name is locally determined. You can call it whatever you want. For example, it can be the name of the teacher's class, period, or any group for which an educator will want to see the data. As a pro tip here, you may want to include the school year to the group name. This helps teachers distinguish between the groups of students, especially if if they've been assigned groups for not only this year, but their previous year as well. So it's going to help them understand which group they're actually looking at. The second column is the school natural ID. That's also known as the CDS code, right? Or the county district school code. If you don't know what your CDS code is, hey, no worries. Just log into Tom's. When you first log into that homepage as an LEA coordinator, you're going to see it on that top right corner of your screen. You're going to see it first for your LEA. You'll know it's an LEA because you have all your zeros right on the back end of it. Or when you click the drop down, you'll see the different schools and you're going to see the different CDS codes for each one. The third column is the school year. This is the academic year that falls during the spring semester. So here's a good example. Right now, we are in the 2025-26 school year. We would just simply use 2026. You use that 1 year. Once again, spring. Think about the spring semester year. The fourth column, that's the subject code. That grants or restricts access to the assessment data depending on which code is listed. We encourage you to select all because it's the best practice for every teacher to have an idea of their students' abilities in all areas of education. But the choice of access is a local decision as to what subject codes are authorized for your organization. I'm going to give you a very quick story. We had a teacher reach out, we had a school reach out where they're like, hey, we uploaded, we wanted to go over and see the scores. We can't see the scores. As we pulled up the file, we realized that the upload was only ELA. It wasn't all. So they were able to see all the ELA scores. They just weren't able to see, let's say, interim ELPAC scores. So little things like that, it can save you a lot of headache. So once again, we really highly encourage the all, using that all code. The fifth column is the student SSID. That's the easiest one, right? That's the student statewide SSID or statewide student ID. And it's unique for every student. The last column is the group user login. Sounds really sophisticated, but really in short, it's just the email address that you use in Tom's for your staff members. So let's say it's me. I have my email address in Tom's, jvalero@school.org. How am I going to connect that? Well, I have that in Tom, so I'm going to make sure that that's going to connect me in column F. So I'll use jvalero@school.org, and that's going to be our connector. So whatever you're using inside of Tom's. Once again, here's a little pro tip. Sometimes people get married in the middle of the year, and in Tom's, they have their maiden name as the email address, and then when we're trying to upload in CERS, it's the new name, and sometimes there's just that connection's not there. So that's a good little troubleshooting tip right there, just in case something wacky is happening. All right. So this slide shows a roster template that's being prepared for upload. So let's look at row 2. The purpose of row 2 is to set up Ms. Park's 5th grade class as a group with a CDS code for the 2026 school year with all subjects. So row 2 lists the group name, Park_GR5 2526, school ID, school year, and the subject code. Remember, the school natural ID, school year, and group name are required for every single row. Rows 3 through 8 add students to the group for Ms. Park by including the SSID. You'll see one row per student in the group for as many students that you want to add. Remember, up to 200 per group name. One question we get often about rostering is the ability for teachers to see their current students as well as the students they had last year. We get that question, especially in the beginning of the year, right? We come back to school, people are asking, hey, how did my kids do last year? Oh, well, we need to upload those. So let's walk through an example of that. With the sample roster shown, Ms. Park will have 2 groups in CERS as indicated by the red line that separates the 2 groups. The school year at the end of the group name will allow her to know which group she can select to see results for students in her current class, as well as the results for the students she taught last year. The first group has her students for the 2025-26 year. These are the students currently in her class. These students tested with another teacher in 24-25 when they were in 4th grade. The second set has her students from 2024-25. These were the students that she tested last year in her 5th grade class. They are now in 6th grade and with another teacher, but Miss Park can still access their results through this group. A bulk download of groups pulled from CERS and saved before the system rollover in August can be uploaded to CERS easily to facilitate last year's groups. We'll talk more about these bulk downloads in a few slides. We have examples for 2 different options for how to set up the file template. For example, in row 2, we do not have an SSID or a group user login. But in row 9, we did add this information. We point this out to show that there are a few different ways to meet the file requirements, which include making sure the first 3 columns are filled out for every row. Remember, it's whatever works for you. Honestly, whatever melts your butter. But these are 2 really good examples. One option for making changes to student groups in CERS is to save your roster files, make the changes to them, and then re-upload the files with changes. If you proceed this way, it's important to save the file, it's important to save the upload files with names that include the school year and the date it was last updated or uploaded. So you know you're always updating the most recent files. Here's a second option though. You can make the changes in the groups in CERS using the new feature within the CERS interface. We'll show this in more detail in our next live demonstration. But we do want to mention to you that you can assign users to a group, download groups, or delete groups in bulk. You can also add or remove students and add or remove users from groups individually. These were things that we had to do through the student group process in the past with those CSV files. Now with the really cool update, we're able to do that inside of CERS. And once again, we're going to show you how to do what that looks like live here in a few seconds. Beyond filling out the template, there are other rostering considerations we need to think through. So what do we need to think through? Well, how often will rosters be updated? Keep in mind that students come and students go. So how often do groups need to be updated to keep the data up to date? And it's going to look different, in all honesty. So I'm going to give you two different examples here. So for my current organization, we serve a unique group of students in a JJC, or Juvenile Justice Court school, and we have a lot of movement that happens within ours. So we actually have the API set up, the automatic push from our student information system into CERS, because there's just constant change happening. Now, when we talk about our special education school or our SELPA, there's a lot more stability there. So that's actually not part of our API. We only have it for those two schools within our organization. Those right there, we update them probably every 3 or 4 months, just because there's a lot more stability within our special education school. Those we just manually download from our student information system. We happen to be Aries over here, but it could look different in so many different districts. We have some of our partner districts over here where they turn around and they download constantly in the beginning of the school year. And once the school year has begun, excuse me, they actually turn off the API, and then they manually make changes, just because there is an overwrite feature for every time we do new uploads. So some of the manual things that they do inside of CERS, it just doesn't make sense for them to go over and use an API. It's honestly whatever works best locally. Another consideration is who updates the information for rostering. Will the updates be done centrally by the district, or will capacity be built to site coordinators or even someone with the educator role who can do this? Remember, you don't just have to be an LEA or site coordinator to be able to manage student groups. Anybody with either LEA educator or site educator role, they can also do that inside of CERS. They can just do it. And once again, the difference between the two roles, educator doesn't allow you to go over and make any changes in TOMS, as opposed to an LEA or site coordinator where you can make some really major changes inside. So maybe we want to reconsider or consider who might need that educator role. Once again, thinking about the updating the information for rostering, maybe it's your student information system administrator that has educator role, and that gives them the ability to upload rosters, but not the ability to administer any tests. Hey, they're experts in the system, they're query magicians, they know how to go over and pull whatever they need, they can get it in there, get it uploaded, and they don't need, once again, LEA coordinator or site coordinator access. So once again, it can look very different. Now, what does that look like over here with us? Well, I'm the LEA coordinator, and we do the uploading over here, along with my partner in crime, Jessica Peterson. She's also one of the LEA coordinators over here that goes over. We happen to go over and use Aries once again to go over and do that. So it's not our student information system administrator that does this process. It's actually us. We're the ones that go over and set these up. We're the ones that set up the credentials to go over and get that information going back and forth. But once again, it can look different in different organizations. The one thing that we do want to consider, though, and something that we have to always think through over here and a lot of our partner districts, is there was a lot of excitement in the past with APIs. Once again, those automatic transfer of rosters, and it was a great update. But we just want to caution with anytime you upload your student groups, if the information is the same, it will overwrite what was previously there. So anything you're doing manually, one more time, you just want to go over and keep that in mind, because everything gets overridden if it's the same student name. So once again, it can look different. It's whatever works best for you locally. Another consideration is what groups should be rostered in CERS. So here we want you to consider how student groups are supported by other instructional staff. Are there any intervention groups or groups being monitored that need to be rostered into the system to track progress? How are we uploading our ELD groups for EL directors and site EL leads? Do we connect our TOSA coaches to rosters? Perhaps there are other groups not mentioned that would be great candidates for creating groups inside of CERS. If you have the SSIDs and you have certain groups that you want to go over and create, and you already know who you have in your whatever you're looking at, you can create those custom groups. So it's just a matter of local decision how you want to go over and create those and get those uploaded in. Here's an example. You could have one group that a district created locally, and maybe it's for LTELs or long-term English learners. Maybe you had that on a spreadsheet somewhere and you had all of the SSIDs. Well, you can go over and create a group name if you have the CDS code, the County District School Code, and you have all in your upload, and you connect it through the email address of whichever teacher or educators you want connected. You can create a long-term English learner group, upload it, and within 20 minutes or less, they're going to be connected inside of CERS. You're going to have that group pop up. So it's a matter of going over and just knowing which groups you might want to create. We also want to point out that we have LEA coordinator vignettes about rostering in the coordinator how-to hub. For each topic, there are short videos from 2 coordinators from small LEAs, 2 from medium LEAs, 2 from large LEAs, and 2 from charter schools, and 1 from a county office of education. And 2 of the topics focus on CERS rostering, also known as managing student groups. So the link to the coordinator how-to hub is in your resource guide. And once again, I know Nikki's put that into the chat a few times. All right, so you've heard us talking through all these different really cool features that are inside of CERS, and I know our excitement is really high right now, and you just want to see what does that look like. So we're going to do a live demo right now. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to walk us through the features of CERS that allow us to manage groups within the system beyond just uploading groups. After this, you'll have some time to do some exploration in CERS, and then we'll move on to the next section. So I'm actually going to minimize this presentation right now, and we're going to see how proficient I am. Ooh, that's how quick I was, right? And we're going to show how do we do this inside of CERS itself, the sandbox account. So once again, I'm going to go to CERS. Once again, I'm not using the live environment. I'm using the sandbox. And here we go. I'm going to log in as a sample district. And of course, it's going to take its sweet time. So while it's going over and thinking, once again, what we're going to walk through is really, this was our dream. This was when our colleagues at Smarter Balance and CD announced that there was this big update to student groups, we all went over and started doing backflips. So here we go. We're in, this probably looks familiar to everybody. One more time, custom aggregate reports, which is what Alicia was going over and taking us through. We have the district school exports. And what we're going to focus on here is student groups. So when we click on student groups, this, once again, in this sandbox account, we're going to see what it looks like when you have student groups that have been uploaded. But let's say that, oh my gosh, I want to go over and I want to assign this group to another educator in my school, or maybe I want to assign it to a principal, or maybe somebody in the district. There are a couple of ways we can do it. I can check the box next to this particular group of students. And if I check that box and we see the Sandman, and I think I stole that from Erin. Erin Gordon was the one where she said, you got to click on the Sandman, and I'll never unsee that now. Or not Sandman, excuse me, Snowman. So when we click on the Snowman, the 3 dots, it's going to give us options. We can either assign it to somebody, we can download this group, or we can delete the group. Now, I can do it for each individual group, or I can go over and check all of my groups, do one big batch, and I could just mass assign this. So let's say I clicked on, once again, the snowman, and let's say I wanted a principal to go over and have access to this group. Or even better, what if I wanted to assign it to myself so I have access to this group and I don't want to go over and add my name to that upload process through managing groups? I can go over, add my own email address to it, and then you'll see a blue button that'll actually let you go over and submit. And once you do that, in 20 minutes or less, if I were to log out, come back in, I will also have access to these groups. They will be part of my groups that I will be able to see. So maybe you're in a meeting and you're with all of your site administrators, you're an LEA coordinator, and you want the site principals to have access to all of the teachers in their school. No problem. When they log in, because they're already assigned to a school, they can check all the boxes themselves, click the snowman, and then click assign. They add their email address in there, and then click the blue button, they will automatically have access to it. Maybe they have a site coach that they want to go over and connect. We don't have to go over and use that upload process anymore necessarily to go over and try to add in all the different users. Something we mentioned earlier was the system does roll over in August. And so when the system rolls over, we lose all of our groups that we've uploaded. No problem. Before the system rolls over, and especially if you've added the school year to these rosters, so let's say it was 2025, 26, I'm thinking of the school year, that was somewhere in the name. When you click download, it's going to download, and it's disabled because I'm in the sandbox account. It'll work in the live environment. You can actually download all of these groups, and when the system rolls over, comes back up, they're perfectly formatted. You just go over, you drag them in, and you can re-upload the groups without having to regenerate them all over again. And then the other I'm not going to click on is you could delete if you needed to. In the past, sometimes I'm very guilty of it. I made mistakes when I was going over and uploading groups. And sometimes it was a challenge to try to go over and delete them. Now I can mass delete if I needed to. So just different things that you're able to do within the system. And once again, super cool updates, and they make our lives a lot more efficient and easier. The other thing that we're able to do too is we can go over and manage individual groups. So what do we mean by that? If I click on any group, it's going to open up and I can actually see which students are in this group. We can also see who has been assigned to these particular groups. Let's say that I wanted to, it's partway through the year and we've gotten new students in. Once again, how did I do this? You click on the group, you open it, and if I click on edit group, I can go over and now, rather than trying to re-upload anything new, if I know the SSID of the student, I can actually go over and type it in. Let's see if I can actually get a right number here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 2947. So if I know the SSID of the new student, you type it in and you can click add. And here it is. It's asking, oh, you want to add Christy Brown? Yes, I do. So you go, you click, you add it, and then eventually it'll add the students into this group. And then you'll just click save. So it's not going to let me do it right now, once again, because I'm in a demo account. So you can go over, you can add students, you can delete students, just easy ways to go over and make changes. You don't have to necessarily, one more time, add them into that manage student groups CSV file. Maybe I want to edit who has access to this group. I can go over one more time, just like I was doing on the other page. I can add in, maybe it's my colleague once again, Jessica. I can add in, hey, I want JV Peterson at fcoe.org, whatever it is, and you can manually add people in. Now, here's the one thing we want to make sure that we're very clear about, though, with this. We add people in, and we're doing it manually. Remember, things can overwrite, though. So what do I mean by that? Let me actually cancel this. Let me go back to edit students. If I re-upload a group, let's say that I added Jessica, I added me, we've made all these changes. They were manual changes. I added in SSIDs. And let's say that next week I went over and I did a new upload out of my student information system. And it was for Sample Elementary with this particular CDS code. And it was this exact name, Sample Elementary School Grade 1. The second I upload it, if my name's not in there and Jessica's name's not in there, Nikki's name's not in there, whatever I've done manually, if those names are not in there in the new upload, it's going to overwrite all of the manual changes that I've made. And once again, that goes back to we're all having a lot of conversations now locally and in our districts as to where do APIs live in this really cool new world where we can manually make changes. How does that look in the different districts? Who's going to use an API? Who's not going to use an API? Who needs to manually upload? Who's going to manually add these things? So just food for thought and just some considerations we're going to want to continue thinking about as to how we're going to go over and manage student groups in the system. So that was our live demo. I hope you enjoyed our live demo right now. I'm actually going to go back into our presentation right now. And this is the part where, oops. Oh yeah, no, we are in Q&A right now.
We sure are.
All right, so I'm
Ready to answer some questions about CERS rostering?
So I'm going to apologize already because I have not had a chance to read anything in the Q&A, so I might have to be prompted a little.
All good. All good.
All right.
Our first question is about group names. And it started as an integration question, but I think we can make it a little more general as well. So if I have a SIS to CERS integration running and during that integration, it's uploading groups into CERS with weird names, maybe like long strings of numbers, how can I fix that? Which also begs the larger question of if I've uploaded a group, can I change the group name?
Yeah, good question. So if you, I'm trying to understand this. When we uploaded it, the name was a little wacky, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
So the really cool feature we were showing in there where there's two things you can do. You could either mass delete through what we were just showing in the live demo, and that's probably the way that I would do it. I would go over and just delete all the rosters, and then I would get back into whatever that bulk upload is, and I would clean up the the group names. I would clean up the group names to be something that's going to make a little more sense for getting those uploaded. But definitely using that really cool feature now where you could just mass delete.
We actually we were chatting off to the side behind the scenes and came up with the same solution. As Cindy from Smarter Balance explained, that group name is one of the like identifying matching fields, so you can't change it. You can either adjust your SIS to CERS integration to get the group names different. If you can't do that, as Joe said, bulk download the groups, bulk delete them, change the group names in those downloaded files and re-upload, and voila.
Mm.
All right. What do you recommend if teachers want to access their groups from a prior year? So we know the system rolls over every August, everything's wiped out. But like you showed in the earlier slide where the teacher can have the two groups from the current year and the prior year, what's the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, so best way to do it in all honesty is to download the rosters before the system rolls over and make sure that you have 25, 26, show something what the year is. That way, when the system rolls over, as soon as it pops back up, it's only down for like a day or so. It's really efficient. Our colleagues do a great job of going over and rolling that. Once it comes back up, re-upload those same exact files in and make sure it says 25, 26. That way, when you're adding your new rosters, which are going to be 26, 27, more than likely, that teachers can tell the difference. So we just want to be cautious because the more rosters that we're adding, especially if they're a secondary teacher, they're going to have a ton of just different layers and rosters that they're going to have to go through. So we just want to be as thoughtful as we can with those.
Thank you. And then keeping an eye on the time, I'm just going to get through the last question real quick.
Yep.
It is about if we have an integration running, let's say every other week, does that affect teachers' custom groups? And the answer to that is no. It's not going to wipe custom groups every time you run a new SIS to CERS integration or do a manual upload. However, if you remove a student from a teacher's group, it's going to remove it from their custom group. If you add a student to a teacher, it's not going to automatically add them to their custom group, but it will not overwrite custom groups or delete them. So you're in the clear. And with that, Alicia, you want to wrap us up here?
Definitely. Okay, so one last topic as we bring you home is around CERS resources to support you in your access of CERS. And so as we talk about each resource, you'll notice that there's links in your resource guide, a one-stop shop. Don't lose that guide. It's very important. And most of the resources that are mentioned are in that resource guide, but also on the CERS resource webpage. So if you lose it, that's okay. The CERS resources webpage contains buttons to access the live CERS environment and the sandbox, as you saw today. A link to that SIS to CERS vendor integration webpage. The user guide, interpretive guide I mentioned as we got on the landing page as well. Amazing instructional videos, which includes how to understand the system of CERS, how to create groups in CERS, is a very hot item. And so again, please join us for these other modules for us to take you a little bit beyond. There are quick reference guides that will walk you through step-by-step functions, especially for those new teachers that might need supports as you're training. Oh, and the data dictionary for the California Educator Reporting System. That is the go-to document for me. And we want to remind you of the introductions to CERS trainings that were previously recorded as a series of micro-learning videos. This allows you the flexibility to pause as you need to, process information, or log off because you got the part that you needed. And please don't forget those vignettes that Joe mentioned in the Coordinator How-To Hub that talks about CERS rostering. All right. And with that, we've come to the end of our training. We hope you found some useful information about creating CERS reports and rosters. Please give us feedback. We want to be better for you as a training team. Please take 3 minutes to complete a quick post-training evaluation. We greatly appreciate it. And when you close the Zoom, you'll see that link in the evaluation in your browser. And to close, on behalf of CDE, Sacramento County Office of Education, and your training team, we thank you for spending your time with us today. You're amazing. Have a great night.